And now it gives a great pleasure to welcome into the BRfm studio today Martin Whitaker, who has extensive experience across almost every area of the motorsport industry, including McLaren, Ford and Colin McRae, and Bahrain and the governing board of Motorsport FIA. Good morning, Martin.
Morning, Steve.
Everyone is excited by the Circuit of Wales, but can you tell us, Martin, where the project currently sits regarding Welsh Government and the financial aspects?
Well, I think the crucial point is that we have raised all the necessary capital investment, which is in the region of £425 million from the private sector.
Wow.
And as I say to some people who ask me that, I said we didn't raise this by crowdfunding. This has come from two significant investors. One of them is effectively a household name. People will know them. They're a big finance company with billions of pounds that they're able to invest in projects of this nature. The other one is just as well known in the financial community. It wouldn't be so well known in the private community or the public domain. But we have term sheets from those two companies guaranteeing that level of investment. Those term sheets were supplied to the Welsh Government earlier this year, which effectively, in simple terms, kick-started a period of due diligence. Because what the investors are looking for and what the Welsh Government has been asking for is a level of guarantee or risk guarantee for the project, which is in the region of 50% or lower. So essentially that means that the private investors take 50% of the risk and the Welsh Government takes 50% of the risk. That doesn't mean that the Welsh Government is investing hard cash in the project, but they are effectively guaranteeing the project should, in the unlikely event that it falls over in years to come. That means that the risk of 50% would be then on them. And so to that end, that's where we are at this point in time. I think it's also important to stress that for the benefit of providing that guarantee, the government then receives effectively a dividend every year, which amounts to something in the region of close on £125 million over the period of some 30 odd years. So in a sense, there's a solid return to the government in cash. Obviously, there's also considerable return to the government in terms of the awareness and profile, the business, the jobs and the effective revenue that the circuit generates for South Wales, for Wales in general, and particularly for this part of Wales and for this region. So we're now in a period of due diligence. We've just effectively finished that period of due diligence. So we're out of that now. The government and their advisors have looked. I don't think they've left a single stone unturned. And let's not forget, there's a massive amount of documentation that goes into these due diligence programs. People who've been involved in due diligence on projects will understand that. And this clearly is a massive project. This is a huge project. There won't be many projects in the UK, let alone Wales at this moment in time, which have a £425 million private sector investment portfolio. So there's a lot to look at, and as a result that has taken a number of weeks. They've had questions during the course of that due diligence, as you would expect, and so our team has been there to answer those questions. We have myself and our advisor, Richard Parry-Jones, who I worked with at Ford Motor Company, who was the Vice President of Global Product Development, so a significant member of the automotive community, but also somebody who is clearly Welsh, is very well known to government and has provided a huge degree of support and experience and knowledge to the project during the course of the last, 6 to 9 months. And so Richard and I, together with some of our advisors, have sat with government officials almost every single week, would you believe, since September. I think we just missed a few weeks over Christmas and New Year. But I think that's an encouraging sign because it shows that we're working with them. They're listening to our problems and we're clearly listening to theirs. And it takes, as you can imagine, as I've mentioned, there's a huge amount of documentation to go through. I think it makes people realise with some degree of confidence that both parties have taken this very, very seriously. And I think we have to welcome the support the Welsh Government has given us at to this point. So we're now in the position where we're waiting for the Minister Ken Skates, the Economic and Infrastructure Minister, to meet with his cabinet colleagues. We hope that's going to be within the next couple of weeks to make a final decision on what we hope will be their approval for the project to go ahead. Once we get that approval, we are ready to go. And I think all of your listeners will be very pleased to hear that.
Yes, me as well. Ready to go. It's really good. Right.
Well, I know it's an important point because
they
call it shovel ready, but essentially there's an awful amount of work has been going on behind the scenes over the last five or so years to ensure that the land, and it's 830 acres, as I think you're probably aware, not a million miles from where we're sitting. That land, there's been a lot of work gone into it, and the deregistration of the land, the planning, etc., etc. So there's an awful lot of work gone on, but we are ready to go. And I think that's a crucial point, because we don't want to be misleading people in the sense that there's going to be another long period of time before we can actually start work. I mean, we are ready to go. Our contractors, FCC, the construction company, and Roadbridge, and together with their colleagues at Allen Griffiths, they're all ready to make a start on this project, and really genuinely we're looking forward to that moment more than you can believe.
I can imagine, because I imagine the paperwork you must have had, it must be
tremendous. Well, there are thousands of documents. Yeah. And you have what is called a data room. So there's a virtual data room and there's a real data room. Right. And if you have a virtual data room, obviously everything's on computer generated, and the other things are physical pieces of paper. So there's an awful lot of equipment, a lot of documentation that people have to go through. So that's why it's taken the due diligence period in particular has taken a long period of time.
I bet you can use it as steps upstairs. I expect all the paperwork that's involved with it, I should imagine. Some people have said the Circuit of Wales is just a racetrack. Is that a fair statement, Martin?
Well, let's be perfectly honest. If we were starting again, we probably wouldn't call it the Circuit of Wales. We'd probably call it something like Destination Wales, because at the end of the day, it isn't just a racetrack. I mean, of course, first and foremost, it is going to have its reputation built around the fact that it is the most technologically advanced racetrack in the world. And how good is it that that's literally going to be in our backyard? And I think that's really exciting. And that gives everybody something to be really proud of, not least the government. You can imagine when they go on their trade missions around the world and they can say, look, we've got the most technologically advanced circuit literally just up the road from Cardiff. I think that's a really significant statement. And of course, don't forget, look at the companies that are involved in that particular statement as well. And just the MotoGP, and as I think you know, and your listeners will know, we own the rights to MotoGP, the British Motorcycle Grand Prix, which again is very exciting. But look at the number of manufacturers who are involved in that championship alone. And I think you and I, off the top of our heads, could very easily name the motorcycle manufacturers involved, and Yamaha, Honda, Ducati, etc.
Yes.
These are Suzuki. These are massively big names in the motor industry, the motorsport industry, and of course the automotive industry worldwide. And so they will be running annually on our circuit, so we have a connection to them. And don't forget, we will also be on the calendar throughout the whole year. It's not just one race weekend, but we're going to be there throughout the year as a round of a world championship, the FIM World Championship. But yes, so essentially we will have motorsport events, probably 4 or 5 international events per year, plus 20 or so other weekends of motor racing with significant regional, national and other international championships taking place. Not all on the track. Some will be off-road. There'll be rallycross and motocross, supermoto, events of that nature. But perhaps more importantly, to get round to answering your question, we also have a really high concentration of other activities, particularly action sports. We have developed a partnership with Extreme International. Extreme is, somewhat confusingly, they run Extreme Sports, but the company is called Extreme. But Extreme is a global brand. They run over 80 events worldwide every year. They have a broadcast channel, which I think is broadcast into millions of homes, tens if not hundreds of millions of homes around the world. In I think it's just under 70 countries. And they will be running an action sports facility on site, which includes all the stuff that you can think of. And that will be a 365-day concern, just as the rest of the circuit is. And we'll come back to Extreme in a little bit, because I think it's important that we talk about the local effect that will have. But In addition to that, we are able to run festivals and exhibitions. There's a big call for exhibitions throughout the country. Festivals we know are always exciting for people. And we've built specifically designated areas on the ground, which will allow festivals and exhibitions to be run. And then in addition to that, of course, arts and culture. Welsh art is very important to us, and obviously so is the culture. So there'll be a considerable emphasis on arts and culture. Indeed, I think what we're looking at is very, very much a sort of an arts and culture trail, which effectively will start outside the circuit, and because we want to make the most of the incredible benefit that the A465, the new Heads of the Valley Road, brings us.
Yeah,
there are very few circuits worldwide that have a major dual carriageway stroke motorway going past their front door, and we want to maximise the passing traffic. And that, I think, is good for the region, it's good for the local towns and the local villages. It's also clearly good for us. So if we can start attracting people from outside and on that 465 to come into the circuit, that's great for us. And don't forget, when the link from Abergavenny up to Beaufort is finished, and boy, is that going to be a spectacular piece of road.
Isn't it?
But when that's finished, we will be connected to every single major city and conurbation throughout the whole of the UK. And again, that's a pretty impressive statement. I can't think of many other circuits in the world that have that sort of communication and transportation link. So that's crucial to us as well. And then finally, there will obviously be hotels on site, there'll be catering, there'll be restaurants, there'll be merchandising and retail opportunities. But finally, there will also be an automotive and technology park. Now, admittedly, that is not in phase 1, but it's in phase 2 and phase 3. But nevertheless, very much a very clear objective and aim of the management team. And we're already getting a lot of interest from companies, not just local or regional, but interestingly international as well, who are looking to base their business and their industries and their facilities here in the Rassau region. So I think that's very exciting. And I think it speaks volumes for where we are. It's quite difficult for us in a sense, if you think about it. I quite often use the analogy of a monopoly board. And once we get past go, then we're in a really significant position to be able to develop a lot of these relationships. But the great thing for us is that there's already a lot of interest in the project from companies around the world. And genuinely that is the case.
That's absolutely brilliant, because the next question I'm going to ask you is, can you confirm what the job numbers will look like for the project, and is there a commitment to recruiting locally? Because I suppose that's what the local people would...
Let's address that point first, but clearly there is a huge commitment to jobs, and essentially that's one of the primary reasons for wanting to do this in an area which desperately needs regeneration.
Yes.
One of the first things that we will do, and I've made this a commitment from myself and from our own team, is that we will. We've already identified premises in Ebervale because we want to have a shop window in Ebervale. And if I probably explain the shop window as perhaps being closely akin to an Army Careers Centre. I think we all know what an Army Careers Centre looks like, or we may not have necessarily been in one, but we've got a pretty good idea what it does. And so the idea is that people from the region can come into that shop. That shop, they will be able to talk to members of our staff who will know what jobs are available, what training opportunities are available, what career paths are available. We will be able to talk about the project during its construction phase, and obviously which I think is a very important period for us, because that's a period when people are going to start seeing what jobs are available. And when we start talking about jobs, because construction phase alone, we'll see something in the region of 1,600 people working on site. And we are very, very keen, and I think we've made this very, very clear, that we want the vast majority of those people to come from the local community. And I think that's the first major step. So the objective of the shop window is to make sure that we are accessible to the local community, and that we can literally on a daily basis, because we will be like a normal shop. People will be able to come in and they'll be able to learn more about the project, which is to their benefit, and to find out what's going on. In addition to that, we will be also building a visitor centre. We've had initial discussions with the council about where to put this. They've identified some land. Now, to be fair, we've got no further with that, because I think, again, that's something that we will clearly ramp up and gear up very, very quickly once we get the government approval to progress. But the idea with that visitor centre is to make sure that people from far and wide, and most importantly locally, can come in and see what we're doing. And that leads neatly on to the fact that there will be a very big education push. And I know you want to talk about education, which we can come to later.
Yeah.
But we're very keen that local schools are able to visit the visitor centre, get involved in projects and the like. So what we're looking at is, in terms of jobs, is very much jobs on site, so essentially direct jobs. And we see that being something in phase one, which will be the sort of the first, certainly if you think about it, the construction phase will be 2 years. It's 24 months of construction. So if we start next month, then we're going to be ready in July 2019. It'll probably be a little bit later than that, if the truth be known. But that construction phase is seen as being 24 months, and obviously the weather and what have you is a contributing factor to that. But we see in the phase one area something in the region of 560 odd permanent jobs, and another 270 plus temporary jobs. Now, there are all manner of different sort of equations of how you work out what a temporary job is, but when we're running events, for example, we will have a lot of people on site. So if you're running the MotoGP race, the numbers of people actually physically working on site probably is going to run into well over 1,000 people. But on a daily basis, there will be definitely on site, genuinely attractive employment opportunities. Now, that's direct. Indirect, clearly, the world's your oyster. And you're then looking at all the linked jobs that come as a benefit to it. Now, whether that's in tourism, whether it's business related, and you name it, there's every chance that will be connected in some way, shape or form to the circuit. And the fact that the circuit, or the destination rather, is here, will lead to the development of those jobs. And as we mentioned earlier on with the Automotive and Technology Park, that's a whole new opportunity in the future as well, because clearly those are jobs where companies which are not directly linked to the track, but nevertheless want to be close to the track, right, because of all the benefits that it brings, whether it's in terms of component manufacturing or product manufacturing, even vehicle manufacturing, race car manufacturing, for example. They will take advantage of the testing, and the development opportunities that the track delivers. Because don't forget, whilst it's one track, there are actually numerous variations of that track. So you could run two tracks at the same time. There'll be proving ground opportunities for both on-road and off-road bikes and cars. So there's a tremendous amount of value. And what we've just discussed is purely really around more of the motorsport stuff. So if you look at it, the companies such as Extreme and what they're doing, they will be employing people on a daily basis as well. So it's all included in the numbers that I've given you.
Yeah.
But I think the fact of the matter is we recognise that there is a task force that's been developed by the government to target, I think it's something in the region of 10,000 jobs in the South Wales valleys. And we're very big supporters of that. And let's be honest, the sort of numbers that we're talking about are genuinely big percentages of that 10,000 total, especially in a region which hasn't enjoyed great priority in recent years.
No, that's right.
And that's one of the primary objectives for basing the facility here. So there's a lot of talk about jobs and a lot of talks about whether we can deliver it or not. Genuinely, when you start to look at the type of activities that this facility will deliver, then it's very clear to see that we will be providing hundreds of jobs and thousands of jobs in the long term that will effectively be as a direct result of this facility coming to this part of the world.
And benefiting all the local businesses as well, as you say, with tourism and from around the world.
Well, of course. I mean, the first thing that any organizer or promoter, the promoter, for example, for MotoGP is a Spanish company called Dorna. The first thing they're going to ask is, how many hotels have you got in the region? So one of our big activities of late is to actually try and identify exactly how many bed spaces there are in the vicinity. And I tell you what's very interesting to me is that clearly we've got the construction of 2 hotels on the site very much in our phase 2 planning, and that will be a 5-star a hotel together with probably a 3-star hotel. But already, if you look just in the location around here, they're already, I think there's a new Premier Inn being built just down the road. There's another one just being, it looks to me like they're producing it on the 449 or the 40 going into Monmouth. There's massive opportunities for the hotel industry both to expand and to improve on what it's already got here as it stands today. So talking to the local community, whether it's here in Blaenau Gwent or whether it's in Monmouthshire or in the surrounding counties, there are massive opportunities for tourism. Don't forget, MotoGP will deliver 120,000 people over a race weekend.
Wow.
And that's just one weekend that we're running events, and we will be running 4 or 5 international events plus a plethora of other events during the rest of the year.
Opportunities are endless for the community of Blaenau Gwent. It really is, isn't there?
Well, I like to think so, and I think, look, the important thing is that we're normal people. I think sometimes we get the bad rub of people saying, oh, they're just a bunch of financiers from city slickers from London. Well, that's not the case at all. The financiers are financiers for a very good reason. They generate money, and let's be honest, 425 million during a period of the sort of political upheaval and economic upheaval that we've had in the last 12 or 16, 18 months is pretty impressive to not only hold on to that money, but also to generate new money as required. And so the finances have to do their job. And let's also be straight about this. The contractual agreements that we have, both with the government and with everybody else involved in this project, make sure that money stays in the project for the long term. So these financiers aren't going to be disappearing and buying a big yacht in the south of France and running that. These are people, these are real people. And in terms, I run the team on the ground, if you like.
Yes.
And my absolute objective is to deliver what we've promised we're going to deliver to the region. And at the moment we have a small team that's going to grow rapidly once we get past go. But genuinely, we're all passionate people. We know what we're doing. We've got plenty of knowledge and experience. We didn't turn up doing this yesterday, as you said very kindly at the start. I've got a lot of experience of running motorsport and sporting activities. The other people that we've currently got on our team, they're all experienced in their field, and they are all absolutely dedicated to making sure this project works, and most importantly, works for the people of this community.
Yep, absolutely brilliant. We saw the success of the Champions League final in Cardiff, but can this level of exposure and these results be replicated in Blaenau Gwent?
Absolutely. And if you think about it, I think the Economic and Infrastructure Minister, Ken Skates, was recently talking about the fact that I think we're looking at Commonwealth Games, for example, and whether Cardiff and certainly some of the facilities around Cardiff, or national stadia, if you like, could be involved in a joint bid. I think I'm correct in saying that.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, you've got a national stadium in the Principality Millennium Stadium. Well, what a fantastic stadium that is. You've got the Velodrome, and you've got other great football grounds as well. But in a sense, you think how impressive it will be to have a national stadium in inverted commas, which is one of the world's leading motor racing venues.
Yes.
And that's exactly what it will be. In Blaenau Gwent, you will have a national stadium. It will be a national stadium for motorsport. There's no way you can look at it any other way.
It's so exciting.
Well, I mean, coming back a little bit to the actual stuff on the ground, if you like. I mean, this is such a diverse and interesting circuit as well. This is a circuit like no other in the UK. This is a circuit with almost 50 metres of rise and fall. Now, I don't expect, Steve, you necessarily to be a huge motorsport fan or necessarily know every single circuit inside out, but that's pretty impressive. Certainly when you look at the other circuits in the UK, we think of some of the great circuits, great racing circuits, such as Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium. Huge rise and fall, good for spectators, good for viewing, but most importantly, it's great for the spectator in terms of seeing great competition. So yeah, I think we've got a really important objective in terms of making this a stadium that people in Wales can be proud of. But yeah, it's we will have, as I mentioned earlier on, if you look at MotoGP alone, that'll be 120,000 people plus over that race weekend. At the moment, we're staging it on August Bank Holiday, and look at the knock-on things that come from that. But there will be other events as well where you will. Not every event's going to be a large event, but at the same time, you will have other international and regional events where you will generate 35, 45, 65,000 people for racing and off-road and motocross and supermoto rallycross, for example. You'll get big crowds, which again, it will all benefit the local region.
Brilliant. And back to the question though that we mentioned, what about the commitment to the education sector through development? How will this look?
Well, I personally find that very exciting. I mean, last week I was with the children from Dayton Primary School in Tredegar, and a lot of their mums and dads, and a few of their grandparents as well, who gave me a bit of a hard time when I said that we were opening a shop window in Ebbw Vale. But that was good. I mean, it's nice. It was good to see them all there. So we had that down at Cardiff Met, and that was a very simple project where the Dayton primary teachers were looking at using or enthusing the children or asking them what sort of project they'd like to get involved in. And I think I'm right in saying that the kids themselves said, look, we'd like to use the circuit as our project. Yeah. And I tell you what, it was just fantastic. It really did your heart good to see these children getting involved. And, you know, afterwards, we had a small team down there with Paul Shaxson and Dylan Herter and John Jones. We were all down there, and it was great to talk to the parents afterwards and just really sort of engage with them. And, you know, these people so desperately need this facility to be here in Blaenau Gwent. They're so desperate, not so much for themselves, but I think really to give their children a future. And I'm not, maybe... I just think that's, to me, it was a real eye-opener. It wasn't as if I didn't know it, but I think when you start talking to people like that and you really feel it. But to get back to the education point, we're really excited with what we can do with education. And it's not just primary school education, where we've clearly talked about what we've done with Dayton Primary, and there'll be other activities, but it then leads into how those kids can come and be involved in the project, whether it's through the visitor centre or even designing things, or, you know, there's all sorts of things you can think of where kids can get involved in designing things or doing physics or science projects. But that's a crucial thing. But then in terms of also other things that we're looking at is developing an ambassadorial program. Now, for example, Extreme has 100 worldwide ambassadors. And we're also looking to develop our own local ambassadors, so sportsmen and sportswomen, local business leaders. And the idea is that certainly the agreements that we're pulling together at the moment, for example, for some of the sportsmen and women that we want to have as ambassadors, is to make it very clear that at least a day or two of their agreement with us, their annual agreement with us, means that they will spend time with local school children. So they'll come to the schools and they'll talk to them. And, you know, I mean, we're all parents, and how exciting do the kids get if they know that there's somebody who's well known coming to talk to them at school, and that's what we can deliver. And that enthuses the kids, it gives them a passion, it gives them a range of projects that, you know, on a normal day-to-day basis probably are not so easy to develop. So we've got a great chance of doing that. But so that's more for the, if you like, the younger element. But of course it extends up to the senior education and higher education. And that's where I'm really delighted where we started working. Coleg Gwent is a very good example. Coleg, we are going to need to feed all these people who are on site. I just talked earlier on about having, 1,600 plus people on the construction site. Well, they're all going to need to be fed. Yes. And so what we want to do is, we're already doing so. We've had meetings with Coleg Gwent because they obviously have a faculty which is all about catering. So let's work with Coleg Gwent to produce a local company which can supply catering for not only the construction phase but into the long-term future of the project. So you're automatically providing opportunities for training and for youngsters to get involved in a career path that they've obviously chosen through their chosen education subject. But they can genuinely hands-on get involved in something where they don't have to move to London or to Bristol or to Birmingham. They can actually be involved very much on their own doorstep. And I think that's a really exciting project. So that's one thing where we are directly involved with Coleg Gwent automatically. But then there's a whole range of particularly technology, science, automotive-based projects with South Wales University, Cardiff Met, etc. So these are things that I think are very, very exciting. And again, just underlines, if you like, the the objective and the aim of engaging with the young people, and most importantly engaging with the community, to make sure the community feel that this is very much their circuit, that there's a degree of ownership, if you like. We see this circuit as a force for good for this particular area, and that's not just Blaenau Gwent, it's the whole of the South Wales Valleys, and I genuinely believe that will be the case.
I think you're right. I really do. It's and as you said with the youngsters, I think sometimes the youngsters get underestimated of their knowledge in the technical world and that, and we don't listen so much. But I've learned here, we've got the Chit Chat show on a Sunday we have at the radio here, and the youngsters come in, and the ideas and they come up with that is absolutely brilliant. And as you say, getting them involved with the educational side of the Circuit of Wales as well is a great big move forward for everyone in the area.
Well, really, and sport's such a great leveller.
Yes.
And whether it's motorsport or whether it's mountain biking or triathlon, swimming, whatever it may be, archery, you name it, we're going to be doing it. If we've got a minute, let's just get back onto that. But the thing about children is that they all love sport, and as I said, it's such a great leveller. And it has no barriers, has no divides, or certainly if it does, it shouldn't have.
Yes.
And so to that end, the opportunity to work with local schools, and I think you can hear the passion in my voice about this.
Definitely.
I'm really genuine about the way that we work within the community. And in a sense, it's been difficult for us because, and I think perhaps in a sense that's what this show is so important, why it's so important to us, because in a sense it gives us a chance for people to realise there is so much that we want to do, but in a sense we've almost been held back because we can't deliver too much before we actually get past go. But I think some of the things that we've been talking about now make you realise there is so much that we do want to get involved in. And as I've said, sport's such a great opportunity for everybody, particularly the young.
Yes, it is, definitely. I've got to ask this question. There's Kevin out in Monmouth. He asks, what do you think of David Davis's views and criticisms?
Oh, listen, I think at the end of the day, David Davis is a local MP. He's just trying to do the best for his local people. But at the same time, we want to do the same. We want to develop a good working relationship with David Davis and his team. It's very important to us that we do so. He is an MP who has constituents who are both individuals and, most importantly, businesses. There are a lot of businesses in Monmouthshire that we will be working with. Let's not forget, when the construction phase starts, I mean, I've seen the list, and I know that government officials have seen the list. There are a lot of companies who are based in Monmouthshire who will be invited to tender for work on the project. And that is significant. And you can't get away from the fact they are based in Monmouthshire. So whether they're a business, whether they're a hotelier, whether they're a caterer, whether they're a hired car rental company or whatever it may be, David is their representative. And so we look forward to working with him. At the end of the day, it's all about briefing. If there are things that David Davis and his team don't necessarily understand about the project, then we're more than welcome to sit with him and talk about it. And I think that's the best way to look at it. I am sure that the majority of people in Monmouthshire and the majority of constituents in Monmouthshire genuinely see the benefit. I mean, certainly we speak to a lot of people in Monmouthshire, and we clearly speak to a lot of businesses in Monmouthshire, and certainly those businesses are very keen to do business with us. And ultimately, that'll be for the good of the area as a whole. So, yeah, that is a relationship that we see growing. It has to grow for a number of reasons, and so that's, I think, the best thing to say on that.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Martin. And we've run out of questions for you now. So thank you ever so much for coming in today. It's been absolutely brilliant, and I just look forward to BRfm, especially working closer with you now as things progress then.
Well, listen, I mean, there's all sorts of things. We talked about the visitor centre. We ought to have you doing your show from the visitor centre on a regular basis. I mean,
sounds good. These
are all the sort of things we can do. And I mean, I think they excite me. I'm sure they excite your listeners. I can clearly see it excites you. Oh. So yeah, let's make sure it works. And because I love the opportunity to come and talk on shows of this nature. And thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, and thank you for coming in. It's been a real pleasure meeting you with us. And we look forward then to things onwards and upwards for Blaenau Gwent, that's what I say. Okay, thank you, Martin. I'm gonna have to play this one, aren't I? It's The Chain and Fleetwood Mac.